So every company has chapters in it, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on what chapter you think ESPN is in right now.
I'm going to say we're just getting started. The industry is in a transition phase right now, you know that. And we're seeing declines in the traditional ecosystem, cable and satellite universe. And there's a transition to digital. And that is our future. That is by far the biggest component of our future. And so I say we're just getting started because we are just getting started in terms of direct-to-consumer. We launched ESPN Plus in April of 2018, but we have not yet taken our primary channels and made them available over the top.
So let's talk about that decision a little bit, because the entire media ecosystem has been waiting for ESPN to make that decision. I would imagine when you took this job, 2018, even then, that had to be
absolutely
top of mind. When do we do this? How do we do this? What do we charge for it? Can you walk us through what has been going through your mind in terms of how to make that decision?
You're right. If you rewind to early 2018, I was actually in the meetings, even though I was not at ESPN. I was working at the Walt Disney Company, and I was leading a segment that was called Disney Consumer Products and Interactive. And wearing the interactive hat at the Walt Disney Company, I had the good fortune of being in a lot of the meetings where we were determining the digital future of ESPN. And we obviously decided that we would launch a product that was more niche, which was and is ESPN Plus. But we knew at the time that that was just the start, that ultimately it was all about taking our primary channels and making them available direct to consumer. And so the thinking behind it was, we got to get the tech right. We have to demonstrate that we can handle live at scale. We need to get the product right. What is the product experience? Is ESPN Plus a separate app, or should it live within the existing ESPN environment, .com, and the ESPN app? We obviously ultimately decided on the latter, not building a separate app for ESPN Plus. But again, the thinking was, this is an important product, at the same time, a niche product. It's a way for us to introduce the sports fan, the customer, to this idea of consuming sports content directly through an app, live, and then getting it right, handling the traffic at scale, creating a modern, easy to navigate customer experience, and then getting ready for the ultimate transition, which is taking our primary channels and making them available over the top.
Can you walk me through the business logic about when you know, okay, now it is the right time to launch this thing?
Yeah.
What are the key metrics that you've been looking at?
A lot of it's a great question. I get that all the time. A lot of it is the traditional ecosystem. So let's be clear, that business model has been very, very good to us and continues to be very good to us. When I say that business model, cable and satellite, we are monitoring it very closely. We have a research team that is tracking, not just looking month to month, but forecasting the future as best they can. We're going to do this no later than 2025. And that was the first time we had said that, I believe, publicly.
When the product launches, realize it hasn't launched yet, as you just said, what do you expect the D2C product to look like, and how does ESPN Plus, which already exists, fit into that?
Yeah, another great question. Look, what the industry has referred to as flagship, direct-to-consumer, will be everything that ESPN has today. So it is ESPN 1, ESPN 2, ESPN News, our college channels, and ESPN Plus. So ESPN Plus today It continues to be what it was when we launched, which is a complementary product. So content like UFC, Bundesliga, La Liga, it's the exclusive place to get all 30 for 30 films. We have not yet decided what ESPN Plus will look like in a world where we take our flagship channels and make them available direct to consumer. That is a work in progress. Regardless, when we do make our channels available direct to consumer, our primary channels, whatever ESPN Plus is in that environment will be made available to the customer that subscribes to flagship.
When you do make the decision to go direct to consumer, it's not as simple as flipping a switch. It's not just, here's our games and our shows and that's what the D2C product is. That you want product enhancements in addition to what you see on the linear network. What might some of those product enhancements be?
If you ask me what really separates ESPN from the competition, it's innovation. Long history of innovation that, by the way, predates me. And a lot of praise goes to my predecessors, the leadership team, all the employees at ESPN for leading the industry and not being afraid to try new things, most of which have worked out very well for us, but not being afraid to try things and accepting failure and learning from it. In terms of flagship and taking our primary channels and making them available a la carte over the top, absolutely, we cannot just flip the switch and say, here you go, here are our channels, enter your username and password and you'll just get the live stream. That is important. Again, handling live at scale is critical, but there has to be innovation as a part of that. And so we are looking at product enhancements like more interactivity, more personalization. Of course, there will be a guide. So if you want to just get the linear stream of ESPN 1, ESPN 2, you'll be able to do that. And we're doing a lot of this now in terms of personalization, but ESPN, our algorithms will know I'm a Yankee fan, I'm a Giants fan, I'm a Knicks fan. And so when I fire up the ESPN app, and that, by the way, is where flagship will live. It will live within the ESPN app just like ESPN Plus does today. But when I fire up the ESPN app, and if I'm a subscriber to ESPN flagship, direct to consumer, then it shouldn't just be about the guide. It should be about recommendations. And we're doing a lot of this today, but you can imagine a lot more in terms of recommendations. Customization, so there's personalization, right, where the algorithms kick in, but more customization opportunity for me to let ESPN, as a sports fan, let ESPN know what my interests are in terms of sports, in terms of teams, in terms of players. You can expect us to continue to lean in more there.
From a consumer perspective, you've said already that when you do go over the top with the new direct-to-consumer product, ESPN will continue to live within the bundle, and so consumers can choose one or the other. From a business perspective, do you want to price this product where ESPN/Disney is agnostic to whether you stay in the bundle or sign up for the direct-to-consumer product, or do you have a preference, one or the other?
It's the former. Our mission is to serve the sports fan anytime, anywhere. If you want to continue to access ESPN through Comcast, Charter, DirecTV, through a digital MVPD like Hulu Live or YouTube TV, we're very good with that. Again, to my point earlier, that business model, that ecosystem has been and continues to be very good to ESPN. At the same time, for people who have cut the cord, for people who have never subscribed to that traditional ecosystem, we want to be available at an attractive price point. And so we are out there right now doing a ton of research in terms of price point. We want to make sure that we get it right, that we are launching at an attractive price point, at the same time at a price point that reflects the value that we're going to be bringing to the sports fan. We have by far the best portfolio of rights domestically here in the States, and we're going to be bringing a ton of value to the customer. So Yeah, but we want to make sure that we get that balance right.
For the first time, people are able to see exactly how much money ESPN is making. That is a change that Disney made. There are some fundamental truths about this business, that linear subscribers are falling. The days where ESPN could jack up rates to make up for that, probably over. So in the very grand scheme of things, when you look at what ESPN's revenue and profit is today, and you rewind the clock years ago, it's lower. Very simply, how do you reverse that trend?
Okay, so a couple of things. First off, when we announced our earnings for the first time at that earnings call, it was a very good day for ESPN. And when I say ESPN, meaning our leadership team and our employees. Most of our employees really had no idea what our financial situation was like. Of course, they're aware of cord cutting and the narrative that's been out there about how challenging that's been for our business. But I will tell you, the leadership team was very much looking forward to that day where we could disclose to the world what our financial health was, both from a revenue perspective and an operating income or profitability perspective. And so what the world saw is that despite cord cutting, which is material and a significant part of our business, revenue and operating income or profit was up in 22 year over year and 23 year over year. And I believe that the industry, most people were surprised by that, again, just because the constant narrative that's out there is cord cutting. And again, I'm not diminishing the impact of cord cutting on our business. At the same time, the team has been really disciplined in a couple of areas. Rights acquisitions, we can't have everything, and we know that, and so we've been very careful in terms of what deals we renewed and which deals we decided to walk away from. We've been very careful in terms of the investments in general that we've made. We've been prioritizing digital for many years, again, predating me, making digital a priority, and digital, social, ESPN Plus, all of that has been incredibly important to our business and our business health. So it's a long way of saying, yes, cord cutting up, revenue for the first time last year in the aggregate on the affiliate side was down. However, other areas of our business, digital, direct to consumer, up. So as a net, we were able to grow profit and also at the same time in the aggregate grow our revenue.
You and Disney CEO Bob Iger have talked recently about trying to find strategic partners for ESPN. Can you explain why that makes sense for ESPN and also why it makes sense for potential partners?
It's about one thing. It's about flagship direct to consumer. And so Bob and I, many months ago, sat down and we said, look, this is a huge priority for ESPN and for the Walt Disney Company. Are there things we can do? Are there partners out there that can help us accelerate adoption, ignite adoption of flagship direct to consumer? And we ultimately concluded that yes, there are partners out there. And so we're looking through various lenses, as I said at the town hall a couple weeks ago, tech, marketing, and content. Those are the big ones. And so I can't talk obviously about who the partners are that we're speaking with, but I will tell you there's a lot of interest in ESPN. And for us, it's not about equity, right? It's not about these partners taking an ownership interest in ESPN. That is something, as Bob has said, that we are very much open to. This is about partnership and accelerating the launch or the adoption of ESPN flagship.
But at least hypothetically, you don't have to tell me who the partners are.
Yeah.
What's in it for the partners?
Let's go back to the launch of Disney Plus. We partnered with Verizon. That was a commercial arm's length transaction, a distribution deal. And I think both sides we're thrilled with that partnership, with that deal. It was great for Disney Plus and the launch, and it was great for Verizon because they were able to attract new subscribers to their offerings, and I imagine they were able to reduce their churn. And so, win-win. And so we're out there right now looking at arrangements that are similar to that spirit, right?
Where taking an ownership stake in ESPN could somehow improve your partners' businesses.
Correct.
Previously, we've been living in a world for the past several decades where the primary mechanism of consuming content was the cable TV world, and ESPN is in 100 million households. So it makes sense that star generation would sort of come from ESPN. In the world we are entering, which we live in now, you're now competing against YouTube.
Yep.
And ESPN is no longer big man on campus. ESPN is, to some degree, little man on campus if you're expanding your aperture all the way out to a free service that has global reach, that has billions of users. You hired Pat McAfee. Unlike the other people I just mentioned, that was someone that came from the outside that you guys hired, who already made a brand name from his own. Do you see the next iteration of ESPN where instead of bringing these people in from the outside in, if you're operating as a $30 per month or whatever you guys decide to price this thing, you're going to have an audience that is almost definitionally way smaller than the YouTube audience.
Yeah.
So will the cycle of talent generation actually start being more and more from people that make their brand on YouTube and then come into ESPN rather than the other way around?
If you walk the halls of ESPN and ask our employees what our priorities are, they will, I believe, all of them, be able to quickly rattle them off. And one of them is what we call, quite simply, audience expansion. And that means a lot of things, but one of the things it means is attracting a younger audience. It's incredibly important. In fact, my first town hall at ESPN 6 years ago, I stood up there and I talked a lot about how important it was for us to really prioritize being relevant, having our brand, our content be relevant for younger people. It's an incredibly competitive environment. And I talked a lot about the importance of us being present on social, on YouTube, understanding that it's a different business model and that there is often a scenario where you're not keeping 100% of the revenue. It's a rev share model. But like anything else, you weigh the pros and cons of this job. And from my perspective, being open, being present on those third-party platforms was by far a net positive. And if you fast forward to today, it is absolutely working without any hesitation. Our brand is resonating more. When we do regular brand research, it's resonating more and more with younger people. And what we see is oftentimes they're being introduced to ESPN, to our content, to our talent, on these third-party platforms, and then they're spending more time on our owned and operated, whether it's the ESPN app, ESPN.com, our linear programming. We're actually, through our research, we're seeing that. Now, to your question on talent, you specifically called out Pat McAfee. He's the obvious example. I do want to call out that Pat was working for us before we licensed his show. Pat was working for us on College Game Day. We knew Pat. We had a relationship with him. We loved him. We loved the energy that he brought in the past to College Game Day. But yes, when we decided to license in Pat's show, it was in large part one of our efforts to resonate with younger people. Now, I have younger people in my own household, and they are big Pat McAfee fans. I've said this before, but my dad is also a Pat McAfee fan. So from our perspective, it was really a no-brainer to bring him on board. But the answer to your question is yes, we are fully aware of how new talent is resonating on social platforms, on YouTube. We are bringing on board both front-facing talent that have made their names and had success on these platforms. In addition, we are also bringing on employees behind the camera that are experts in social. Again, because this is such a priority for us, we have a pretty large team of employees that do nothing but focus on advancing the ESPN brand or brands and our content on social platforms. And so we take a lot of pride in that.
I've held this question to the end, but it strikes me that the existential crisis for ESPN is you're moving from a world where the dual revenue stream in cable TV allowed ESPN to gain subscription revenue and advertising revenue that put ESPN at the top of the heap when it came to competitors for live sports rights. So that dual revenue stream allowed ESPN to outspend NBC, CBS, Fox, that were not getting the same types of revenue from subscription like ESPN was able to do by boosting year after year after year. In this new D2C world, you're now facing competitors who are Apple, Google, and Amazon, who have balance sheets that are way larger than Disney or ESPN. How do you compete for live sports rights in that environment long term?
The power of the Walt Disney Company. So, we are a business within Disney. And so when we sit down at the table with commissioners, with our league partners, it's not just about what ESPN can do, for example, the NHL. It is what can Disney do. And so let's focus on that NHL deal that we closed a couple of years ago as the best example. So lots of time with Gary Bettman talking about, of course, ESPN, the power of our megaphone, all of our studio programming, all of our efforts on social. That all resonated with Commissioner Bettman. But on top of that, we brought ESPN Plus to the table. We brought Hulu to the table. We brought the potential for the Walt Disney Company to get behind the league and the game of hockey. And so that is, in large part, a differentiator for ESPN. And the NHL is just one example, but the SEC deal that we closed a couple of years ago, Commissioner Sankey very much appreciated the power of the Walt Disney Company. He's talked about this publicly many, many times. So us being a part of the Walt Disney Company, very important. On top of that, we've talked a lot about our studio programming, the power of that promotional platform. Who else is talking about sports 24/7? I'd like to know. I don't know of anyone else that's out there doing it. Not just doing it, but doing it at the quality level that we are doing it. The investments that we make. I think every league commissioner would sit here right now and say they very much recognize and appreciate the power of our promotional engine. Then I would say production. We've been at this for 44 years. It is not easy to produce events, live events at scale. And we do it incredibly well. A lot of our competition does as well. But when you add all this, when you piece it together, the power of our brand and what the ESPN brand stands for in terms of trust and credibility, I will tell you without any hesitation that we've always had competition. We have more competition today than we've ever had. But I do really like our hand.
So are you saying don't spin us off, Bob Iger? Was that just a long-winded way of saying keep us part of the Walt Disney Company?
Bob's a huge sports fan. He's talked a lot about the importance of sports at the Walt Disney Company, and I think that speaks volumes.